So welcome everyone again to service. The title of my talk today is Homecoming, and it's inspired by a book that I've had on my shelf for quite some time. This is Homecoming by John Bradshaw. So revisiting the work of Bradshaw this week, I see that his concepts and his teachings are so relevant for not only we as individuals, but our society and our world at large. They're so relevant today. And I believe that if Vladimir Putin were to have picked up this book in 1990 and read it, if he were to have done the work, I think the world, the course of history would be in a different place right now. And I can say this of probably every major figure who caused the world angst, to understate the problem. So Bradshaw's teachings in a nutshell, this is my view of his teachings, are that we carry sadness and toxic shame that has been handed down through the generations. And we learn it through the dysfunctions of our family. The shame continues. And the shame and the sadness that result to our authentic self, to our inner child, become lasting, and we carry that on. And our authentic selves become muted or suppressed or not fully realized until we have the willingness to go back and reclaim the inner child, or what you might call the authentic spiritual self. And so that's my summary of Bradshaw's teachings. And Bradshaw said that about this sadness, he said, our sadness is an energy that we discharge in order to heal. So I vision maybe that's grieving, or maybe that's crying, or maybe that's just examining, but it's feeling the feelings. But he said that sadness is so painful that we try to avoid it. The first thing we try to do when those maybe subtle feelings of sadness that come up, we maybe reach for the TV remote control, or reach for an iPhone, or reach for a book or food, or whatever it is that distracts us in the moment. So it's not always easy. It's not second nature for us to want to look at emotional pain. But Bradshaw says to hold this emotional pain inside is to freeze the pain within us. I believe Eckhart Tolle would call that our pain body. So here we are at Unity San Jose, and I could say, we're just going to stick to affirmations and the law of attraction and everything that feels good. And of course, that's also a part of who we are, the uplifting, the effervescent. Of course, that's always going to be a part of who we are. But the definition of spirituality to me is the willingness to become a better person and to do the work. And I think I speak for all of us here when I say that is a definition also of spirituality, that we are here to sometimes do the stuff that is the deeper work. So in addition to meditating and singing and uplifting and inspiring, we also want to go deep, and we want to release the ties that bind us. My spiritual guru, Anita Devine, used to say that for the spiritually inclined, things are always coming up for healing. They're coming up and out to be revealed, to be examined, to be reframed, to be grieved. And I mean reframed in the eyes of the adult, higher sage self, to be healed, and then to be released. And I think that's what the Daily Word was talking about. You don't just let these things go and say, hey, I let go my past. Bye. I'm never thinking about you again. Sometimes you have to go back when things keep tapping on your door. Sometimes you have to look at them closely. And pain is a natural part of that healing process. I was just thinking, I've been grieving my mom so much lately, different than my dad. My dad's grief was like this, hit, and then it decayed over time. And with my mom, the grief is growing over time. But there's a a healing. Grief is a form of love. Grief is a form of release. And pain, this pain in general can be the greatest teacher that we have. So where did much of our emotional pain come from? Where did this sadness and shame come from? John Bradshaw talks a lot about the term toxic shame, because it makes everything toxic and poisonous in our lives. It's so strong. So much of the pain that we carry stems, in his theory, from this core shame that we learned from our parents and them from their parents. This core shame might be, we're not enough. I'm not worthy. I don't matter. I don't have value. I'm not smart enough. My feelings don't matter. And John Bradshaw says that our pain and toxic shame come from dysfunctional families. I mean, we live in a dysfunctional society filled with dysfunctional families. I'm not sure which one, I think that which one came first, right? But if we can heal ourselves one step at a time, I think we can heal our dysfunctional society. But this pattern of dysfunctional families is generations and generations old. Our dysfunctional parents or whoever raised us were themselves raised by dysfunctional parents, and so on and so on. And it gets handed down until we choose to stop the cycle, until we choose to do the courageous thing and want to heal. So how else does this dysfunction affect us? John Bradshaw says, since the earliest periods of time, actually back to our childhood, everything is pre-verbal. Everything depends upon emotional cues, emotional interactions. So when someone doesn't reflect back to us our emotions, we have no way of truly knowing who we are. John Bradshaw also says that the job of the parents is to model. He says modeling includes how to relate intimately to another person, how to acknowledge and express emotions, how to fight fairly. Oh gosh, I think back to my parents and wow, did they not treat me how to fight fairly? Did they not teach me how to fight fairly? How to have emotional and physical boundaries, how to communicate, how to cope and survive through life's unending problems, because life always has problems. So how do we cope with those? How to love ourselves and how to love one another. He says that shame-based parents cannot do any of these because they simply don't know how, because they were never taught how. And he goes on to say, regarding this toxic shame, about family secrets. He says family secrets go back for generations. They can be about suicides, homicides, incest, addictions, financial disaster, and all these secrets get acted out through toxic shame. And the shame generates automatic and sometimes unconscious defenses like denial, like idealization, like repression, like anger. And these defense mechanisms they're survival mechanisms. They help us to cope with these feelings that we don't know what to do with, but they're not the long-term answer in the end. And these coping mechanisms are ways that we basically numb ourselves out so we don't feel the pain. Hence, many of our parents resorted to alcohol and drugs and gambling and became maybe a workaholic. And thus we developed addictions because that's what we learned. So it made me think of in my late 20s, after my struggle with addiction began, I just started to ask why? Why could this happen to this person who was raised in a middle-class family, who went to college, who had parents that told him that they loved me, who provided for me? Why did I become an addict? And why didn't my sister become an addict? And why didn't my twin brother become an addict? And I realized that they just had different coping mechanisms than I did. And my dad, I realized later on, as we gathered evidence and shared stories, that he had a hidden alcohol problem. We didn't even know it was going on. We were raised with it. We didn't know, why he would, sometimes at dinner, he would knock over 3 glasses, huge glasses of iced tea in the middle of a dinner. He would knock it over and he would laugh and say, "Oh, I'm so clumsy." He was drunk. That's why he knocked over 3 glasses of iced tea at the dinner table. And my mom was a rageaholic, which is interesting. I did not discover that until recently, that I did not, the term helps me understand what went on. So all these are coping mechanisms, so we don't feel the toxic shame. They help us survive and get through day to day. One of the lessons I learned in my drug days, was that if we numb our feelings out, our problems are still going to be there waiting for us. We have to face our problems. We have to feel the feelings at some point. We can't hide forever from them. Well, I guess we can, but that's certainly not a life worth living. John Bradshaw says, we cannot heal what we cannot feel. So without recovery, our toxic shame gets carried for generations. And that doesn't necessarily mean recovery from alcoholism. It means recovery, spiritual work, spiritual recovery, right? Which you could say we're all doing here, spiritual recovery. So what's waiting on the other side of this work is wholly worth it. Nothing is more important than to accept yourself and to believe in yourself and to trust yourself. And John Bradshaw says the premise of his work, this is beautiful. The premise of his work is that I came into this world to be me. And the sorrow would be is if you never got to become the person that you were meant to be, or if you never got to discover who it is I really am when I peel away all those layers. And he says that the universal problem is that we've missed perceiving ourselves truly. We've misperceived ourselves. We have a wrong belief about ourselves. And therefore, the deepest flaw is that there's this image of God within us that we don't believe in. So we talk about God as the universe, the source of this and that and everything. But if we don't believe that we are that source, right? Jesus said, I and the Father are one, right? He believed in his divinity. So if we have this damaged or muted view of the authentic spiritual self, how can we claim our divine selves? Bradshaw says, when we do the work, we begin to find out who we really are. And when we find out who we really are, we touch the life spark in us. We touch the life spark within us. And you, more than anyone, know who you are, right? So you're not looking for the outside to define who you are. You're looking for the inside to define who you really are. And again, you may say, David, I've done this work before and I figured this stuff out. But like the Daily Word said, when you reach a certain level of healing, and many of us have done so much work, guess what happens? We get handed or revealed something else because we're capable of healing it. We're capable of healing it. And we move to a higher and higher level of what is ultimately joy. John Bradshaw widened this view to civilizations. He said that civilizations that survive the longest are those that carry childlike traits into its culture, like play and laughter and spontaneity and being fully present. Like if you think about that, you think about people who live the longest time and they interview these people, they're childlike, aren't they? They say, oh yeah, what's your secret? well, I like to have a little Diet Coke every day, or I like to have rum and Coke every day. I mean, whatever it is, I like to have like a cupcake every day. And these answers surprise you, but it's the attitude. It's the attitude of I know who I am. That's what I've heard from people who live the longest. They seem to have an attitude of this is what works for my life, and they carry this childlike uh, state of joy and humor with them. That's what I've discovered, and that's what I want to be more like. So John Bradshaw says that the work of the inner child is not this silly faddish thing where we're hugging our teddy bears. It's the most important work there is. How I feel about myself is based upon what I learned in the family, so I can unlearn that. And all this talk about children, the use of inner child, sometimes I think that can make people feel uncomfortable. I mean, Myrtle Fillmore talks about her ultimate learning when she went to heal herself from tuberculosis was that she is a child of God. We are all children of God, so we can heal ourselves. But if the word child turns us off, I mean, we've got to go look at that, right? If our own inner child is something that we haven't embraced, how can we even be attracted to this work that's based upon us being a child of the divine? We don't want to be a child at all, right? So again, this work is broad and important. I call it soul retrieval work. I visualize like someone walking along a trail and maybe losing pieces of themselves along the way. Maybe it was a divorce, maybe it was a lost job, maybe it was a piece of health that was lost, maybe it was a sadness, a loss of a loved one, but along the way, we see pieces of our soul that have been left behind. And so I think another phrase that's helpful for those of you who don't like inner child work is soul retrieval work. And it's homecoming, just like the title of the book, it's coming home to yourself. And when we feel the feelings, there's a solution, but we can't feel the feelings unless there's a willingness. And so I think David Alt's workshop, which I've been mistakenly calling what's the name of the workshop? The art of destruction, self-destruction. It's actually self-deconstruction. Self-deconstruction. It's taking apart our notions about who we are and putting ourselves back together again, framing it through the eyes of our spiritual highest sage self. And he said the key to this self-deconstruction is willingness. So if you want to explore this further, I invite you to go to David Alt's workshop. And something about homecoming that T.S. Eliot wrote, the poet T.S. Eliot said, "And the end of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and then know the place for the very first time." Isn't that beautiful? It's to arrive at where we started and know the place for the very first time, seeing it through new eyes, like our annual theme said, because we are not the same. Our lens is not the same. So we go back and we're able to reclaim the inner child. We're able to nurture the inner child. And so that inner child becomes, as Bradshaw says, a wonder child. And the place and the emotional state that wonder child inhabits is a place of awe. It's a place of wonder. It's a place of magic. Don't we all still want to believe in magic? I do. I think that's one thing that attracts us to spirituality, is it's not just magic that we make up. It's magic, it's miracles, it's real. And it's the domain of the authentic self. We believe in this magic. Otherwise, the world is pretty boring, isn't it? If it's just transactional. So if this talk called to you today, I highly suggest reading Bradshaw's books. He has many of them. Homecoming is just one of them. He passed in 2016, and yet there are all of the videos of his programs. They're 9-part programs, 9 hours, various, that you can find them on YouTube. And one other thing about this week, Margot and I usually meet on Thursday nights to talk about what songs are going to be sung. And I was saying, I told her, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, because I wasn't sure I was going to talk about this topic. So I said, let's just do something that, feels good, is a good song that we haven't had in a while. Let's do that song called Come As You Are by Donnie McClurkin. And we're not going to do it yet. But the first verse is, come as you are, bring every burden. Come as you are, bring all your shame. Just like Bradshaw was talking about. Come as you are, you may be hurting, but when you call upon its name and surrender, you'll never be the same. I love that. And Margot's going to sing that in a moment, but let's go inward for a moment of prayer. Taking a deep breath and just reconnecting to that piece of us, that part of us that we may call inner child, authentic self. I'm not going to let myself be held back by fear and baggage anymore. Too much wasted time in that. Don Henley said, so often it happens that we live our lives in chains and we never knew we had the key. Well, we have the key. We have the key. So I will embrace myself fully, every part of me fully, regardless of anything that has happened before. And if I need to grieve something, I'm going to go back and grieve it until it's done, if that's my decision. I have the power to do that. So I'm going to pick up the pieces of my soul I left behind. No one's going to pick them up for me. No one's going to pick them up for me. They're waiting for me. You may call that inner child. You may call that reclaiming the higher self, the inner child. It's yours. It's yours and nobody else's. So I reclaim that. I commit to looking in that direction with new eyes. So come as you are. Start here. And know that when you're done, you'll never be the same. And so it is.
Come as you are, bring every burden. Come as you are, bring all your shame. Come as you are, I know you're hurting, but when you call upon his name and surrender, you'll never be the same. Oh, come as you are, all who are broken. Come as you are and find his grace. Come as you are, his arms are open. Let go and let God just have his way and surrender. Surrender. You'll never be the same. Come as you are, your past is over. Come as you are, break every chain. Come as you are, he holds your future, all things are new. this is the day to surrender. Surrender, and you'll never be the same. Oh, no, 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 no. Never, never, never be the same. It doesn't matter where you've been or the color of your skin. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Oh, no, 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 no. Come as you are. Come as you are.